Right, so this video is basically about how you can make this image yourself. First of all, we'll start. What do you need? Well, you need a camera. More importantly, the lens. This is a 18mm f2.8 autofocus by Samyang. The autofocus thing doesn't matter because you need to do it on manual focus, basically. What does matter is the aperture. This is a fast lens, f2.8. There is ones which are faster, f1.8, f1.4 even. But this is mine. I love this lens, 18mm, nice and wide. Secondly, lights. A couple of lights, big one and a couple of small ones. There's actually one just here as well. That's to make things a little bit more interesting possibly, and it's also to light me, so when we go out and it's dark you can actually see me. And that's all we'll be taking. Oh, of course, yeah, tripod. So I'm here at my chosen location. When you're looking at astrophotography, you can't approach it the same way you do as a landscape image. Because the sky will be so dominant, you need to almost simplify your foreground and your midground. Strangely, the exact opposite of what I normally do. So for this image, what I have done is I've had a look and found where the North Star is. The North Star is the point where all other stars rotate around it. Obviously not physically, but that's what it looks like to us when Earth rotates. I think this gives the image a little bit more interest rather than just half a curve, because you want to see what's in the centre of it. To find the North Star, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or if you're a Southern Star, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you need an app. I use an app called PhotoPills. This lets me see through their augmented reality where the North Star is in relation to my subject and in relation to me, which way I need to be pointing. And this is what it looks like. And if you go down to Night AR, what you need to do is pick the focal length which is closest to yours. So on here I've gone 12mm, so I can cancel that. And if I look up, see, I can see, I can just see where the tree is, and now I can see where the North Star is. If I was pointing this way, then you just get, if I just go backwards and forwards, you see the lines of the trees. So if I scrub backwards and forwards, you can see where the stars will go. If I go back, if I scrub backwards and forwards here, as you can see, they're rotating around that point there. So I will be going portrait mode with this, simply because I want the most sky possible. The foreground isn't very interesting, obviously it'll just be black, just kind of in front of me. The midground is almost the tree, then the background is all the stars above me. Settings wise, the first shot I want to take is a RAW. I know a lot of people will be asking, why don't you shoot RAW all the time? Simply because if you take a few hundred images, which we will be doing now, probably 400 or 500 possibly, that's a lot of RAWs, and you want to stack them later when we get into the post-processing. So, one RAW for the foreground, the interest basically, then we'll switch to JPEG for the stars. So I've just checked those shots. One of them will be good, RAW in focus anyway. Now what I'm going to do is change from RAW to JPEG, and I'm going to set the intervalometer up to take the images of the stars. So we are back in the office after a very, very cold night. Before we get editing, there is two very, very important things you need. One is a cup of tea, which is very good. And the other is music. I would be playing some kind of band or something, but copyright, you know that. So I've transferred everything from my camera onto my computer. I put it in two different files. I have one file with all the star trails, and then just by the side of it I have one with the base as well. For you guys that would be a raw file. For me, I've just used a JPEG file just for ease of use. Now I've opened the base file, so this is going to be our starting point. So to open all the star trails, we go to File, Scripts, load files into Stack, and then go to our file folder, click OK on that one, give this just 1 second. Right, so when all that is open, so you have our two images here. You want to go onto the trails, file, save it first. Let's just save it as trails. After you've saved it, make sure everything's kind of backed up. If you click the top one, go down to the bottom, then shift click. Under the blending modes, you go to lighten, and there are your star trails. It's as simple as that for actually getting the star trails. The image itself looks quite nice. I quite like those colours. To make it a little bit more interesting, what I tend to do, you see I have 45 there, so if I do it every 5 maybe, I actually do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I put the opacity down to, say, if we do 10, next 5, put the opacity down to 20, next 5, and the reason I do that, so rather than have just lines, you've now got, if we zoom in, these, and then the tail kind of tapers off. I think it just looks a little bit nicer. I think it's a little bit cooler. So what I'm going to do now, because I don't need all these, layer, flatten image, then Control A selects it all, Control C copies it. I don't need that anymore, but I will save it. Control V, rather than lighten, so this is what lighten does, as we did with the star trails. Screen brings up the stars a little bit better. Can you see the issue we have here? Let me just zoom in. As you can see, the tree has moved during shooting. Could have knocked it, could have moved the ground, but let's just move that. That's close enough for this. But what I do like doing, after you've done this, I put a mask on, do gradient, hold shift down. Because normally you wouldn't actually see the stars all the way down to where the sunrise is, down the bottom. So I just put a little bit of a gradient on there from the stars, basically from white to black on that layer. Now, Control Shift Alt E makes everything into a new layer for us. Now this is where you can start your colour grading, or whatever you else want to do. Personally, I like the Nik Collection, and there is a free version of this still around. Obviously, it keeps asking me to update, but I'm not going to do that. Just give us a second. So, first thing I'll do is a bit of Pro Contrast. Just have a look at these. It does want a correct colour contrast to actually get rid of the blue, but I quite like the blue. So we'll just do it a little bit. Correct contrast is generally a little bit too much. As that's saving, you may want to add a lot more. And if you see on my other image, I did do a lot more. I did the base image was slightly different. I had clouds in it. I had a little bit more tone, colour. This is where you really get kind of creative with it, but that's the basics. So if we go over again, we need one row for your foreground, which is your tree. Generally taken a little bit earlier on. It's not the first one you do because you have a little bit of this light at the bottom, and then you take a few hundreds on a timer on your camera. When we add it to Photoshop, the first one you want is lighten all the star trails. Add it onto your base layer, and then we can put it onto screen or whichever one you like the look of, really. And there we go. That's how easy it really is.